this is one of the fellows in our group that got himself a rifle from an infantryman, because basically we all were given submachine guns, Thompson submachine guns, with 30-round clips on them, with a 45 caliber slug, and he felt that, and I did too. I did the same thing. Traded mine for an infantry guy and took his 30 caliber rifle. Submachine gun was fine in close quarters. If you were doing town-to-town combat, very good. But once in a while, you had somebody that was a distance away, and it wasn't quite that good. So the rifle came in handy if it was a long distance, and it was 6 or 8 rounds of semi-automatic fire anyway, so you could bam, 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 bam pretty darn fast. So it was extremely good for that purpose. All right, this is me on the left, and a gentleman by the name of Rotkins on the right. And he was in the aircraft kind of stuff for a while, but then he got transferred into our outfit, and he went into the howitzer group, and then finally into the tank outfit. And he knew a lot about explosives and things of that sort. So he did a lot of the kind of things we needed, where you had to set up explosive kinds of things, knock down a house or knock down a tree or something like that. He was pretty good about it and could do it real easy. But anyway, this took place after things quieted down in Czechoslovakia, so we're just getting our picture taken. Okay, you're looking at Carlos Lucero. He was our driver, and a good one. He's a young fellow from I think New Mexico, basically, and very often when we were in camp, before we got into the combat thing, he got Soldier of the Month because of the way he took care of his property, the way that he dressed, and the things that he did. Was a heck of a good soldier and a fine driver. But at any rate, he's behind the 50 caliber here, and as you can see, the 30 caliber is covered up with a little canvas arrangement, and that was on the assistant driver's side. Behind his seat, by the way, Carlos would be sitting on the right-hand side. The left-hand side was the assistant driver. Behind the seat, there was a plate that you could release, and if the tank was hit and they were being fired on, you could go out through the bottom and underneath the tank and hopefully get away that way, so that in case it occurred, and it did every once in a while, instead of having to come out the top, that's the way it worked. And by the way, the tank commander had 360-degree prisms all the way around where he sat, so that he could get a sight of just about everything that was going on all around. The gunner, though, had a periscope that had a microscopic sight in it, but he basically was looking in one direction and one direction only. So the tank commander could tap him. He sat right literally between my knees on my tank, and Virgil Holt and I could rap on his helmet and tell him, and I could take over left or right and get him on another target, depending on which was the one that might be most dangerous for us. But that's the way it worked. And the M24 for us was a very good tank. That was it.
You got any humorous story about anybody passing wind?
Yes, I do. You want me to give it now?
Yeah.
Okay, the trouble with this is that if you have anybody who passes a little air in the kind of thing that becomes smell-o-vision, I mean, we had a lieutenant from Texas by the name of Cullinan, and we had a young farmer from Kansas that used to fire a couple of cannons of air, basically the kind of air you don't want to breathe, when we were closed up and in kind of a problem. But Lieutenant Cullinan, he couldn't stand it. He'd pop out regardless to get some fresh air, even if the stuff was coming in that was dangerous. And so at any rate, every time we saw that happen, we knew what was going on and got a little laugh out of it, even in sometimes dangerous situations. This is Virgil Holt and a friend that we had a photograph of after the war was over. And this Virgil was a very good gunner, and a very nice guy. He was from the Midwest, and always did what he could to make life easy for all of us. He was a good guy, Virgil. Yeah, this is a friend of ours that we're in Czechoslovakia, and we had swimming in the river there, just outside of Prestige, a little river. And he was from Findleson, Minnesota, and I had never heard much about Findleson. I knew it was there because I was a Minnesota guy myself. But it was a town that was occupied mostly by Finnish settlers, so they printed their newspapers even in the 40s in Finnish, apparently. And he owned a store there, a grocery store, and decided, though, he wanted to go to work as a soldier, and he was a very good one and a very nice guy. But basically, everything in Finlayson, I guess they spoke their Finnish, and they had their newspapers and stuff, and that was their life, and enjoyed very much. Here we are in Prestige, Czechoslovakia, and we got this little river, and Virgil and I are representing our crew, and these other three guys are from another tank, and they're from New Jersey, all three of those guys. And at any rate, we didn't have any swimming suits or anything, so we had to either use underwear, like I'm wearing, and cut off the leg, and or a pair of slacks if we had one that you could cut off and use. However, one of the guys from Kansas got a bunch of ladies' underwear, the old-fashioned kind down to the knee, bloomers. So some of the boys were wearing that, but we decided we'd do with what we had. No more. We didn't want bloomers, but that's what we were doing, just posing for a picture. These two fellas were friends of mine, and still are, I guess. But on the left side is Gummy Lindquist, and his father was a regular Army guy back in. He was raised basically on a fort of some kind or other. And James Kirkley. Kirkley was the assistant first sergeant when our first sergeant was taken and sent back home because he was a little bit older than most people. He got an earlier release. This is in Czechoslovakia. And so Kirkley is doing the typing there and stuff, getting the records ready and all that sort of thing. And he was working it out so that he and I were going to become combat photographers if we had to go to Japan. And we're going to go together as combat photographers. But fortunately, we learned a little bit about cameras, but before we could get there, it was over. But Gummy, by the way, his name wasn't Gummy, but they really called him Gummy Lindquist because, believe it or not, he didn't have any teeth of his own. He had false uppers and false lowers. And he was my first sergeant in a tank, and he was very good, knew everything there was to know, and was also a pretty darn good mechanic. So he very often was called on to do a lot of things, but a heck of a good soldier. And so was Jim Kirkley. Jim did a lot of things, including combat and what have you, and also taking the first sergeant's place. But that was the way we were going to go, is as combat photographers, but it didn't work out. Here's my friend Kirkley, and there's also two or three fellas that were friends. This fellow on the left side, he was a collector of all kinds of pictures and things of that sort. He had a shop in, I believe it was Michigan, and his wife was running the place, and he was collecting whatever he could and take it out of the frames and roll it back up and ship it out whenever we could, which wasn't too often, but he sent quite a few things home that were abandoned by the Germans that I guess would sell in his shop later down the line. Put it on a new frame, and I guess he would have a pretty good deal. And also another sergeant on there who's a very good guy who got, I think, a silver star, I believe, Balicki, and he's the second guy on the right there. But tanks were being whitewashed This was in Germany, or the edge of Germany, when the snows and stuff were down. So to try to help make it look like wouldn't stand out so bad for artillery fire and stuff like that. But that's what it was for. Sort of, if they could get out of much artillery fire, it was better. This is a town, I think, just outside of Czechoslovakia. We had been down to southern France, and there were an awful lot of people who were surrendering down in that area. And then we swung back up into Germany, and I can't tell you the name of the town, but it's one of the towns that was still on the German side. And we were headed, of course, to up into Czechoslovakia eventually, and that's where we did. But this was not too far from where the American troops met the Russians at Torgu, which is some of our guys were sent over to welcome them and shake hands and so on at that particular thing. But the Russians, of course, had Berlin and were hanging on to their area and didn't want anybody to come in at that time. Later on, they did welcome a few Americans in, but basically it was for political reasons, not for friendship kind of thing.
Was there any reason for the tanks to be in the shade?
No, it just happened to park there, and I have no idea why. Maybe something fired, whatever.
You didn't have any kind of air conditioning?
No, we had a fan though, had exhaust fans.
Okay.
All right, we're on the road again because we were very often transferred into other units. We were part of the First Army, also became part of the Third Army, also went down to southern France to the Seventh Army, and then back up into the First Army and so on. But very often different corps, Fifth Corps, Sixth Corps, and so on. And wherever they needed us, and sometimes we get squeezed out, and when we did, they would try to use us. For example, the Southern France thing was one of the best things we had happen, because, as you know, you don't get a shower, you don't get clean clothes, hardly at all. And I think when we went to Southern France, they gave us a little time to take showers, get some clean clothes, and also to change the oil on the tanks and clean the guns and all that sort of thing. And then we spread out, and some of the people who were escaping through the Ruhr Valley, we started picking them up and bringing them into a stockade made of barbed wire and that sort of thing. And a lot of them were German soldiers who had gotten a hold of civilian clothes and were trying to come through without being stopped. But we took anybody who looked like he was military age, didn't matter what he wore, and he went in the stockade. The only people that we passed through would be females or children or something like that. And so that's what we did down there until we were switched back up to the 1st Infantry Division to get out in front of them. We did our recon for 1st Infantry Division to start out with, and when we landed in France, and then the 4th Infantry Division for a lot of the time, and then to several other units, 2nd and so on, but finally back up to the 1st Army and the 5th Corps. They were sort of our center. But this is just one of the roads that we traveled on, and to find out where we were and what was going on. And fortunately, Lieutenant Cullinan could read a map better than just about anybody and could get us where we had to go. Okay? This is probably in German Sudetenland. When the Germans finally gave up and retreated out of Czechoslovakia, in Sudetenland, the people were out cheering the Germans. We were coming up on the other side to take over, and we didn't get any cheers. Basically, they were pretty well German-oriented, and so that was one of those things. But this looks like pretty well the area. All right, here's a little fellow we met after the war, and he used to come over, and he wanted to help us in every way he could. And the poor little guy hadn't had much in the way of special food and stuff, and we tried to give him a little something once in a while that was good for him. And his name was Pete, and he loved to come over, and we said, "You want your picture taken?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." So put him in there. He could speak a little English, though, and pretty good at that. But basically, that was the little helmet that we wore. That's what he's got on. Looked sort of like a football helmet, but he had goggles on it and stuff like that, and earphones. But basically, he was a very nice kid. And we tried to help out, if we could, kids in France and wherever, give them a little something special in the way of food, or if we had some candy or something occasionally, try to pass it on to the kids, because some of them had had very much since the war started, because especially in countries occupied by the Germans, didn't allow much of that stuff to go around. So this was one of those things where, really nice kid, one of those days.
Can you tell us a story about the kid that was trying to steal some cigarettes out of the cans? And
You did what?
remember, you guys gave him some cigarette packs? One of the fellas, do you remember that story? There was one fella looking through a garbage can, just looking for cigarette butts, a little kid. And then one of the fellas in your outfit found him and said, "Look, we'll give you some real cigarettes."
Yeah, I'm not
You
going to
remember the story?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
These two girls were brought from Pilsen down to our camp, and two of the boys who brought them in were from New Jersey, and said, "Gee, these are wonderful girls." And they got them the GI clothing, as you can see, and the girls were very entertaining. However, most of us were rather reluctant. I had a very nice girl that I could take over to the movies in Czechoslovakia. We had the little 16 millimeter camera thing, and her father was the president of, or the principal of a high school there, and she was a very nice girl, could speak English pretty good. These little girls, though, were entertainers, and at any rate, the two boys that brought them over from New Jersey ended up, unfortunately, with the kind of things that you don't want to end up with. Both of them came down with gonorrhea, and so they both had to undergo treatment. But at any rate, the girls, I'm sure, were not aware they had some problem, I guess. I don't know.
What did the treatment consist of?
I don't know. The boys had to take care of it. They had to go up to, I think they were using penicillin in those days. I don't know what else. But they learned a valuable lesson that ladies that you pick up on the street and bring over and feed and take care of, that can cause a problem. Yeah, this is one of the little girls that came from Pilsen down to the camp. And if you would give her something that she liked, she would give you something that you liked. But as I say, both of the boys who brought them down and liked them a lot ended up with gonorrhea. So, nice looking girl, but you can't be fooled by looks necessarily. This is one of the fellows in our outfit. He could speak excellent Italian. His name was Robert. And Robert had a girl that he met in France, and went back to see her and got her photograph and so on, and thought that he was going to go back to Italy after the war was over for at least a while, but then back to the United States. So basically, he had this very nice lady that was his girlfriend while we were in that area. This is Robert again, and another one of the young ladies that he was liking. And this was, I think, on the border of, I believe, southern France. And the river, I can't name it, but basically they had a river kind of a setup. Boats go up and down and so on. But he was a very good guy with the ladies. He always had a girlfriend right close to him. We would leave Prestige and go into Pilsen, and we'd be honor guard. On our side, we had the section from Pilsen to patrol, and occasionally we would run into young kids and so on, and take their picture just to show you how nice some of these people were. Czechoslovakia. In fact, I met a lady who had lived in the United States for quite a long time and become a dentist, as a matter of fact. And if we had any trouble in Pilsen, we could have her fill our teeth and stuff because she spoke English. They had been over to visit and basically couldn't get back home. So as soon as the war was over, she was making her plans to get back to the United States as quick as she could. But in the meantime, she was doing dental work, and if it wasn't too complicated, she had the stuff that she could use. So a lot of the guys stopped in to get a filling or something like that, and she was very nice. All right, here's a little hero from Czechoslovakia, and you can see he's got his little army outfit on, and he's got an army patch on there, First Army. He got his little overseas cap and cute outfit, a cute guy. And the folks we met in Czechoslovakia were just really nice folks, and generally speaking, the kind of folks you'd like to live next to at home, especially that little guy. This is right after the Battle of the Bulge, basically. Started on December the 16th. We were on the Roar River, both sides, and we had the sea troop up to the north of us. And beyond that was a line of houses, and beyond that were the sort of the beginning of the Siegfried line. There were pillboxes and sleeping quarters and all kinds of stuff like that. However, the town of Manchow was where we were, and that was sort of the place where Germans who got married went on their first trip together. It was sort of like Niagara Falls is, or used to be here in the United States. It was kind of a marriage thing. After you got married, go to Niagara Falls, and that was your first vacation together. The Germans did the same thing with Manchow. And so the Siegfried lines were occupied, and we saw we were on a place, sort of a house right near the Siegfried line, above a sea troop who was dug in behind us, and we saw the paratroopers drop, and they were rounded up very quickly. And then after that was artillery stuff, including some heavy-duty stuff from the German side. And then we saw guys marching down, and so we pulled back. There were 6 of us in a house doing artillery observation. Pulled back to sea troop and got our weapons going and stopped them. And meanwhile, they were trying to cross over the War River to move on down to Liège and so on. But they didn't make it through. It went on for about a week, but they couldn't punch their way through. They tried 3 or 4 times, and it didn't work out. So they went around us and cut behind us, but we were in pretty good shape, and we had enough stuff on hand to do what we needed to do, feed, water, and so on. And so we were in pretty good shape. And so when the 9th Infantry and some of the armored outfits cut back through and got them to give it up, they decided they would move us out of there and leave us off the line for a while to get our new tanks. And so that's what we did. But the new tanks were also whitewashed because there was still a lot of snow and stuff like that. And then when we got back on the line, basically you can see we got our winter stuff on as much as we could. Boots that we used a kind of a salve thing or a wax on that would help to keep it from turning snow into liquids that would go through, because if it was cold enough and you froze your feet, you had a problem. So you had to be darn careful. But anyway, my friend Stalker's on here, and a lot of the guys who was in the 3rd platoon. Anyway.
Which one is Stalker?
Stalker is the second guy from the left. Got his hand over the guy's shoulder there and looking through. Yeah. All right, this is Jim Kirkley, and he's in front of the M24 tank. And you can see that he, my fine-looking soldier, and was a good soldier. Yeah, I took part in many of the combat things that we all did, and always did extremely well. took in some prisoners, and was very often given charge of taking some of these guys back and turning them in. And at any rate, heard from his daughter, who was a school teacher. I was apparently the best man at his wedding, and I was. And at any rate, his wife remembered my name, and the daughter found me on the internet, got in touch with me, and Cindy Kirkley. And so I'm very happy to say that we sort of exchanged some information that was very helpful to me, and I hope my information was helpful to her. And he and I were friends, and we met after the war 2 or 3 times. And of course, he had gotten married and started off. I was his best man, and I was going to college and working nights and stuff, so didn't get much more than that. But for a few years anyway. But a very nice guy, and she's a very nice lady, and her father was a very fine soldier. Thank you. Yeah, that's my first tank commander. That's Gummy Lindquist, and he was son of a regular Army man, and had been raised on Army food and all that stuff basically as a kid. And so a wonderful soldier, knew an awful lot about it, and a very nice guy to have show you what to do in the Army. He was a good guy. This is part of our trip to Sudetenland, and we had to go on patrol once we got into the area of Czechoslovakia that was held by the United States, so that we were called 22nd Honor Guard, and basically our job was to run the streets that belonged on the United States kind of side, and the Russians had their outfit near us, but not on the same streets or the same highway. So basically this was just holding our stuff, and they were holding their stuff. But we did understand from the people we knew on our side, people who lived in Prestige, that when the Russians pulled out or somebody was sent home, they took everything they could take. They took bedding, they took clothing, they took chickens out of the chicken house, food out of the ground, potatoes, whatever. They took everything they could take, and whoever they shared the house with was left with nothing. They didn't care. They took it all. This is on the way to Czechoslovakia. This is going through German Sudetenland. And we ended up in a town called Asch, Germany, when the war supposedly ended in May the 8th of 45. But for us going into Pilsen, they were still having a scrap there, so they put us back with the 1st Infantry Division one more time, and some Rangers were in there, and house-to-house stuff for a few days until they gave it up. They were going to be future armies of Germany officers. They had been in some kind of a training camp up in Bavaria, and they came down that far thinking they were going to escape, but it didn't work out that way. They got into a firefight. And so until that was settled, they then finally gave it up. But it took a few of them out first. That was it. This is part of the scene that was German Sudetenland and right adjoining Czechoslovakia. And as you can see, some really angular kind of areas to go through. And at any rate, we went through and finally ended up in Prestige. And that was basically where we stayed until we got pulled back into France. The tanks, we left where they were, and they were shipped back out apparently, by rail. We went to France in 6x6 trucks, and then railways when we got back to some railway areas. But that was the way we ended with our tanks.